Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Breaking Fast, this fourth Saturday in Lent edition. And today, of course, we're going to look at the stational church for today's Mass. Now, you may recall from my homily at Mass this morning that St. Nicholas in Carcere, St. Nicholas in prison, which is the dedication of today's stational church, is built actually out of two temples and a third. That is to say that where the church is, how it stands, was on the edge of a forum, in this case the auditorium, which was a vegetable market, and the church, either side of the church, were two temples, and the church itself was a third temple. In this case, dedicated to piety. Janus was one of the others, and I forget, Hope, Spes, was the other temple. Anyway, those temples and the date from 190 something BC. So the temple itself, or the foundations of the church, go all the way back to before even Christ, and of course much later, obviously after Constantine, it was reconstituted for Christian worship. St. Nicholas in Carcere, there used to be a public prison nearby. Carcere, of course, means prison, and St. Nicholas is, of course, as you know, Bishop of Myra is patron saint of children, pawnbrokers and sailors, but also of prisoners. And hence, when the church became a church, it was dedicated to his patronage. It's technically a deaconry. So, remember you know, of course, about the College of Cardinals. And in the College of Cardinals, you have cardinal bishops, cardinal priests, and cardinal deacons. They represent the clergy of Rome, and in times past the titular churches around Rome, of which there were 25 original parish churches, they are the titular churches of the cardinal priests. Then there were other churches, of course. These were known as deaconries, and these are given to cardinal deacons. And then the suburbican, sorry, term's gone out of my head, but the assistant bishops, basically, in the Diocese of Rome, the suburbican sees, as they're called, for example, the Bishop of Albano is one, Bishop of Ostia is another. They are the cardinal bishops. So you have then reflected in the College of Cardinals the old, as it were, parochial and deaconry set up of the parishes, going way back at least to the third, sometimes second century. So when a bishop is made a cardinal, he invariably is made a cardinal deacon or a cardinal priest, and then he will take possession, as they call it, of his titular church. It takes the form of a mass, a papal decree, a letter is read out, and essentially the cardinal is instituted as the titular, the title of that church. So if he's a cardinal deacon, then he'll be titular of that deaconry church. If he's a cardinal priest, then he'll be titular of one of the old parochial churches, one of the old parish churches. The deaconries, of course, now that kind of refers to a time back when there might have been a chapel there, but the deaconry essentially was the apostolate of the deacons, who, of course, would go out and serve the poor, distribute the alms, etc. And often these deaconries became hospitals. Some of the older hospitals in Rome were originally deaconries. Some of them became churches in their own right, etc. So St. Nicholas in Carcere was originally a deaconry, and distributed alms, and the deacons who were based there would look after the poor and the sick of the area. So that's something about a little bit about the history. Interestingly, of course, the oratorium, as we said, is the vegetable market. In today's context of the liturgy, the people, the faithful, and the Bishop of Rome and the catechumen gathered at the Church of St. Angelus in Piscium, meaning St. Angelus in the fish market. And then they processed from there, the Church of the Fish Market, to here today for the Mass at the Church of St. Nicholas in Carcere, next to the vegetable market. Anyway, we've only got, I'm afraid, a very short video. The Catholic Traveller hasn't done his version for this year yet, and otherwise there are very few decent videos of St. Nicholas in Carcere. It's in the old quarter of the city, and it's not sort of on the main tourist map, as it were. But here we go. Here's St. Nicholas in Carcere. So the church we see now was entirely remodelled by Giacomo della Porta in 1599 under the patronage of Cardinal Aldobrandini, who later became Clement VIII, and that was his bust you saw on the facade there. The interior has fine antique columns taken from the pagan temples that used to be either side, with diverse capitals. And below the altar in the Confessio is a dark green porphyry urn containing the remains of Saints Marcellinus, Faustinus, Simplicius, and Beatrice. To the left of the main apse is the Chapel of St. Nicholas, and further on the Chapel of the Conception, with a popular shrine to Our Lady of Guadalupe. St. Nicholas also hosts a devotion to Our Lady of Pompeii, whose feast is on May the 8th. From the sacristy, one can go down into the basement, where there are many remains of the temples on which the church stands. Sometime before the 12th century, the deaconry of Sant'Inerio ed Alisio, which reverted to titular status, was transferred to that of San Nicola. In 1128, Pope Honorius II erected to the church as the stational church for today's Mass. Technically, San Nicola in Carcere still remains a deaconry, so in other words would normally be given to a cardinal deacon. However, in current times, they kind of slightly elevated it to one for a cardinal priest, because they needed an extra church. And it's located on the Via del Teatro di Marcello, so it's just south of the old theatre of Marcellus. There we go. So that was St. Nicholas in Carcere. You saw there as well a replica of the Shroud of Turin, and there are various other relics contained there. In fact, it was at one time something of a reliquary for the Diocese of Rome. In other words, they used to house a lot of the relics of saints there. So that was Saint Nicola in Carcere, today's stational church. Now, I do want to just say a few words about a couple of things. One is regarding the Daily Examen. Now that we broadcast at 10 p.m. Every day. Some of you I know are avid viewers of it, and you will know, of course, that for the past essentially 4 weeks of Lent, we've basically sort of given a meditation or a reflection on the nature of meditation and the various disciplines and forms of prayer. And from last night, really to continue into Passiontide, we're now offering a introduction, as it were, to one's own daily examen. So what I mean to say is that if you want to achieve the full benefit from the Daily Examen broadcast, please try and tune it. It usually goes live at about 5 minutes to 10, with a holding screen, which with 3 propositions for preparing oneself for a daily examen. So I would suggest following those 3 pointers, and then when the daily examen again begins, the idea really is that one would already be settled, calmed, quietened down, and ready really to pray and to reflect, so that what I can give then are just suggestions and prompts to meditation and interior prayer, which, when the broadcast is over, you then continue with and complete your daily examen and then your examination of conscience. So I want to explain that now, because that's basically the kind of concept. Otherwise, I've got to kind of set things up every broadcast, which means we lose about 5 or 10 minutes if I try to explain, now calm down, watch your breathing, focus on a candle, blah blah blah. If I have to do that every night, it gets a bit boring. So if you can tune in when it goes live, you'll see that there are 3 pointers for prep. You can follow those, so that when it really goes live at 10 o'clock, you're already in mode, as it were, to receive the prompts for the spiritual or spiritual reflections for the examen. So that was one thing. The second thing is, if you haven't already, please become a Patreon patron, just for a few shekels a month. But if everyone who viewed these broadcasts gave just a little, it would make a big difference in terms of production and quality going forward, and to sustain this apostolate. Now, with that, of course, I'm going to put a poll on the Patreon page for Old Roman TV, where you can have a say. If you sign up for a few shekels a month, you can have a say as to the nature of future programs. So in other words, what kind of programs we'll be doing in the future. Obviously, what we're doing at the moment has been specifically designed for Lent. After Easter, however, of course, things need to change. So we won't be breaking fast, for example, at 3 o'clock. So become a patron, and then you can participate in the poll and share and give your opinion as to what kind of programs and programming you would like to see from Old Roman TV next. Some of the things we're thinking about is interviews with Old Roman clergy. We're thinking about perhaps a thought for the day, just a snippet, short video or podcast, perhaps readings from the fathers, patristics, maybe with some commentary, maybe not, but just to listen to, maybe reading the Bible, so that you can listen to it on a podcast at your leisure or whatever, or biographies and lives of the saints, all sorts of things. So sign up for Patreon patrons, and you can then participate in that poll and help us determine what to develop and how to develop next for Old Roman TV. Now, when you go to the Patreon webpage, you'll see that there are different levels of membership. Very basic membership is just a few shekels a month, but if you're able and want to give more, then there are benefits. So please do consider that. There's a lovely mug with the Old Roman logo on, hoodies, t-shirts, and we're going to add other things there as well, as incentives and as gifts for patrons. If you're not familiar with the concept of Patreon, essentially the idea is for people who support a particular project to come together, to support it financially, but also to generate a community of interest, of mutual interest. So that's the whole kind of concept behind it, and this would seem very appropriate for the purposes and auspices of Old Roman TV. So that's why we're pushing this. So anyway, bless you as always for watching. Next broadcast, of course, will be at 6 p.m. for the Angelus and Express Rosary, and then at 6:45, of course, it's Saturday, which means Old Romans Unscripted. And that, of course, is the pre-Passiontide edition. Tomorrow is Passion Sunday, so Bishop Nicholas and I will reflect this evening, give some pointers and some spiritual direction for observing Passiontide, where things become a little more intense spiritually during the next 2 weeks with Passiontide and then Palm Sunday and Holy Week. So do look to join us for that at 6:45 p.m. GMT today. That's everything. Okay, take care of yourselves, look after others, and remember, God loves you.